Cray Robichaud. Cray, I would say, is a very, very outside the box, forward-thinking naval officer who's been on the Royal Canadian Navy outreach team, trying to get that message of what our Navy is to Canadians and a broader audience. Cray, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Al. And Jerry, thanks for having me. I am a strategic outreach officer for the Royal Canadian Navy in Atlantic and Arctic Canada. I have a few other colleagues that share the rest of the country, whether it's Quebec, Ontario, and the western part of Canada. But in my case, I oversee strategic outreach to showcase and display the Navy to Canadians. We do this through a number of our strategic outreach programs. Our flagship program is called the Canadian Leaders at Sea program. And essentially that consists of bringing Canadians, who we like to refer to as Canadian leaders, out to sea with their Navy on board a warship to get to know the men and women that serve on board that ship. And they also have an opportunity to participate in what we refer to as an ashore program leading up to the at sea portion. And then we usually bookend it with another sort of ashore program. The ashore program, really, it depends on where the sea program starts. So, for example, if we're here in Halifax, which is where I'm situated at our Naval Operational Headquarters, then we'll see different pieces of the infrastructure of the Royal Canadian Navy. A visit to our Maritime Forces Atlantic headquarters, maybe a visit to Irvine Shipyard, Halifax shipyards here to see the ongoing work of the new Arctic and offshore patrol vessels. If you're sailing, in this case, say maybe on board one of our Halifax class vessels, then we'll try to see if we can, fit in a tour of one of the submarines or another class of vessel, Kingston class vessel, or it's one of our minor warships and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, like I said, our job is to tell that story.
Ray, that must be really exciting for folks to kind of walk down to the dockyard and see firsthand inside those gray hulls or inside the submarines or even the facilities that exist there. That must be really exciting. They must be just eyes wide open.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, there's a great deal of sort of anxiety on the part of the participants leading up to the program, because really they don't know what to expect. They may have heard a story of a previous participant who could have been a colleague or a relative that explained to them what they did, and then they find themselves now having traveled to, say, maybe Halifax, Nova Scotia, to embark on this journey. And I can honestly say I get a great deal of satisfaction through the job that I do, because I get to live vicariously through each and every one of those Canadian leaders and looking through their eyes as they see things for the first time.
Of course.
And it's a really exciting experience.
So I want to go back to the Greenland thing. I'm led to believe that Greenland, in terms of ports and infrastructure and the like, are much, much more developed than that side. Is there a relationship with the Kingdom of Denmark to use the ports in Greenland?
Yeah, we land right now, because our vessels aren't so big, we land in Greenland for almost 50% of our trips. So I mentioned Bay Roberts. But when we're busy fishing turbot, to save time, we will land in Greenland, offload there, and then go back to the fishing grounds. We'll land in Nuuk. I got a chance to go to Greenland, actually, to go on one of her vessels. And Al, I got to tell you this story if you got a minute.
Sure.
I think we do. So how I got to Greenland? Well, I guess because I got CEO by my title, out of the blue, I got this invitation to a Bank of Canada AGM in St. John's. And Jerry, I used to go to these things as a reporter, right? And all the reporters would sit at a table with the reporters and listen. But now I'm sitting at a table with board members from the Bank of Canada. And this is a fantastic experience. And, I kept looking around thinking, geez, they must have made a mistake with the email. These people, the chairman is up there speaking to us. And one of the women on the board, knew I was from the fishing industry. She said, "Oh, maybe you'd be interested in a program that I'm involved with. It's called the Canadian Leaders at Sea program by the Canadian Navy." And this was, I think, a Thursday night. And she said, would you be interested? Absolutely. I said, I'd be more than interested in this. So she said, I'll send you an email. So I expected to hear something in a couple of weeks' time, maybe. The next morning, there was an email, and I replied to it, said I was very interested. At the end of that day, Friday, I got a call from Cray Robichaud, I think is his name, saying, we'd love to have you. How about joining the HMCS Ville de Quebec on a trip to Nuuk, Greenland? So talk about coincidence. This trip to Greenland was coinciding with our vessel landing in Greenland.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, how many people get this opportunity? Long story short, I got into the program. I got on board the vessel, frigate, which was absolutely unbelievable. The Canadian Leaders at Sea program is fantastic. I mean, they don't treat you special. You're in a room bunking with 12 other snoring men, shall we say? and they show you every aspect of the vessel on the way over, and more on that later. But I'm on this vessel for 7 days, 6 or 7 days to get to Greenland. They didn't go full speed, of course. They land, the Nuuk harbor is pretty small, right? I get off the vessel in Nuuk, and there across the dock is the Inukshuk, our fishing vessel. And not only that, there were 3 vessels in the port at this particular part of the port at the time. In between the two is this massive 68-foot sailing expedition boat that a friend of mine happens to be skipper of.
No.
This is a guy I met in St.
I'm showing Nuuk on the map here right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that's where we were. So this is a guy I met in Newfoundland because he sails around the world, and he ended up staying with us for a couple of months, and he happened to be in Greenland at the time. So I visited him. I got off the frigate. I got on the Inukshuk, and I went to go on a fishing trip that took me back to Baffin Island, and I got off in Baffin Island a week or so later in a community called Kikatarjuak. And for all this to come together, boy, that's an incredible coincidence.
But that's an unbelievable story. Wow. Yeah. That's like the trains, planes, and automobiles of the North. Tell me about the Canadian Leaders at Sea experience for you.
Well, I got the first thing I say is the leadership in that name of the program there. They try to invite people who maybe, I guess, will help them spread the word about it. But the real leadership I saw, Alan, was on the vessel. The captain's name, I looked it up last night, I'll be honest, Captain Michael Elhart. He was incredibly young to be a captain of a Canadian warship, really. Maybe just looks young, but he seemed incredibly young to me. But very, very, again, he had all those...
Chris, everyone's starting to look young to us now.
But what really blew me away was this was a training, obviously not a mission, right? When they bring civilians on board, it was a training trip. But he really let everyone do the job they were training for. So the captain was there, but in an absolute relaxed, confident manner. Remember, we were steaming along, and someone on the radar said, Captain, there's a large iceberg 10 kilometers, whatever it was, north-northeast. And so there was a woman who was at the helm as, I guess, acting captain or navigator or helmsman, whatever she was. And so he just said to her, "Okay, we got some time. Plot a course to the iceberg. Let's go have a look." And then he didn't sit watching. He left. He had faith in her and he trusted her. And she was very young, on the bridge, controlling the bridge at this time. And I was just really amazed by that. To see them give someone that opportunity. And I'm sure he was watching, had people watching to make sure it was all safe. But, you just don't see a lot of captains give their young recruits that much confidence and responsibility. But then, on the trip, I realized every day was spent practicing and doing drills and doing them again and doing your firefighting response and doing your emergency procedures and hard turn practices. So these people may not have been, may not have that many years at sea, but they've been given lots of chance and experience to do everything. There was no idle moments on that vessel in the 6 days, I can tell you.
Yeah, it's amazing how those teams work together. Back to your captains, your explanation of how calm the captain was. But that goes back to Craig Dovin's philosophy of surround yourself with really smart people and then trust them, right? And that's exactly, I would suggest, what the captain was doing there. He had a lot of good people around him, and he had a lot of faith in them, and they had a lot of faith in him. But it's amazing on board a Canadian warship to watch the whole thing function as one unit. It's like a living, breathing thing, and leadership in those settings comes from all directions. You must have had some great conversations with the junior sailors as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what they did. They mixed us. They would split our mess times, or whatever you call lunch and dinner and so on, with the able seamen and sometimes with the middle officers or with the brass. But you'd meet everybody every day. There were 3 meals, and you'd be with a different group every day. And we would sit alongside the regular sailors, the young recruits, and chat freely with them. There was there were no restrictions on who could talk to who and say what, and it was fantastic. I even got my hair cut by a guy who was on board there and was doing haircuts as a sideline during the downtime. So I think I was the only person on the team there who trusted the naval officer to cut his hair in the Navy style.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.